This is the homework help for 11.1c. So this is all to do with function notation. So just remember f stands for a function. F of x is kind of like y equals, and the number in the parentheses means replace x with this number here. Now, there are a few different ways that we can do this. One way is we can just type in the question, first of all. So just type it on in, just making sure it's exactly the same. And then you can type in the value that you want. So where it says -2, you can type in x equals -2. And you're just looking for where do the two things actually cross. So they cross here. -2 obviously was the number that we used, the x value. So you would want the y value for this one, which we can see is -4. Now, there are a couple of other different ways we can do this. So another way we can do this question is we can type in the question, but then change the letter. So instead of x, I picked A because it's easy to do. And it'll say add a slider. And then you can just type in the number that you actually want. So we wanted -2. And notice it will actually give you the answer. So it kind of means you don't have to scroll around too much because sometimes it's not easy to see the intersection as you're doing this question. And possibly the last way you can do this one is you can also use a table as well. So the rule was, whoops, I better scroll down just a little bit so I can see it. X squared. Now I'm going to do it deliberately wrong to begin with, just so you can see. And you can already see that little error sign there. So the reason it hasn't accepted this is, remember when we're using a table, you don't put x, you put x1. And actually there's two of those this time. Ta-da, there we go. Now it seems to be working okay. And then you can just type in the number that you want, and it will actually give you the answer. Now, one big advantage of this is if there's multiple values that you want, you can just type them all in and you can see all your answers in one go. So I think that's kind of a nice way of doing that question. So for future questions, I'm not going to show every single method for this, only if we have a slightly different one. And you can decide which of those three methods that you personally find easiest. So for question 2, not particularly an obvious one for this one. Find g of 8 minus g of -5. We actually have two parts to this question. So what it wants you to do is it wants you to work out when x is 8, what does this equal? Using either a method as we just showed you a second ago. And then it wants you to work out g of -5, which means what happens when you plug -5 in for x, using any of those three methods I just showed you. And then once you have that, you're going to take that first answer and you're going to subtract the second answer from it. So I'll do g of 8, and I'll do it by the table method. And probably the advantage of doing it by the table method is we can put both answers in at the same time. So it says 3x minus 2. So I'm going to type in 3x1 minus 2. And then as I type in 8 over here, that tells me that my first answer is 22. And then I'm going to subtract whatever happens when I put -5 here, which I'm going to let you go ahead and try. And then you can obviously just subtract those two answers. Question 3. Oh, here we go. Find the range for the domain of this. So this means the x values. Domain is that word for x. So in table, go ahead, type in x1 squared minus 2. And then down the side, you can type in -2, -1, 1, and 3. Look for the 4 numbers and then pick them out. Now, you might think straight away, well, it's not this one here because there's only 3 numbers. Just remember, you might actually get a repeat answer. So you might get the answer -1, -1, 2, and 7. And therefore, this could still be a correct answer. One thing you should look at is look at the first number that comes out. Let's suppose in the first number that comes out is -11. Like you plug in -2. If you were to get -11, you can pick this answer straight away because none of the other answers even have a -11 in them. So sometimes you can save yourself a little bit of time that way just by referring back to your answer choices. F of x equals 10. So this one's phrased slightly differently. This doesn't say f of 10. The 10's not in parentheses. It doesn't say x equals 10. It says which of these gives us an answer of 10. So I will start out the question, but I will not finish the question. So I will show you one answer that's clearly wrong. I need to scroll down just so I can see that rule again. 1/2 x. And obviously, as I'm typing in 1/2 x, I'm going to put 1/2 x1, or else it's going to say error. Whoops, I did not want to do that. I just added in an extra column. Okay, hopefully it won't mess up the question. And the first one says, what happens when you plug in f of 13? So that means 13. So I get 14.5. The question says which one gives you 10. So obviously not 13. And then you could go ahead and you could try each of the other answers to see which one will give you the correct one. Question 5. Which function results in f of 2 equals 13? So same type of thing. This time you're just going to type in each one at a time. So create your table for 3x squared plus 1. Try 2. If it gives you 13, you're good. If you don't get 13, then try the next one, and so on. Possibly you might want to try all of them just to make sure you didn't make a mistake. So if you have two answers that are 13, you can try and figure out which one would actually be the correct one. Question 6. Same sort of thing. F of -3 is 14. So we just got to check each one as we go along. So type in the rule, type in x as -3, and just look to see if you get that answer of 14. What is f of 6? So that just means x is 6. So go ahead and type in the rule, put x is 6 in your table, and see which one is the correct one, or whichever method you're going to use. Question 7. Word problem this time. F of x is 35 plus 15x. So there's our rule. 35 plus 15x1 represents the amount of hours in dollars. If Mr. Lewins earns for working X hours, how much does he earn for 25 hours? So in other words, they're saying X is 25. So you can create your table, plug in X as 25, and then you can figure out which one of those is correct as well. And is this our last one? This might be our last question for this one. A function is described below as this. The domain of G is all real numbers greater than 0. The range of G is all real numbers greater than or equal to something. So this will be one where we just need to actually type in the graph. So G of X equals, so as we were doing our questions earlier for part B, if we don't see a picture for domain and range, we kind of want to just look at the picture. And then we can just look. So if I can move my graph around, we can see this carries on up. So we're just interested in this lowest point, which you can actually just click on, and it will actually tell you the lowest value. Remember, with range, we're talking about the Y value here, though. And I should enable you to finish this one. So go ahead, submit quiz, and that's the last of your 3 quizzes.